Many fans have criticized the ambiguous ending of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, the second part of the Final Fantasy VII Remake trilogy. Spoiler warning, obviously I'm going to spoil that ending for you, including the ending of Final Fantasy V, the ending of On Her Majesty's Secret Service, and the endings of Harry Potter, otherwise I wouldn't be able to talk about them. In my honest opinion, there is something missing from this discussion. The original Final Fantasy VII wasn't special because of the irreversible or unavoidable death of a beloved main character. Actually, that's a thing that happens a lot in mainstream media. That's not special. It happens in The Last of the Mohicans, it happens in Winnetou Part 3, it happens even in big popular franchises, including James Bond and the death of his wife Tracy, including Harry Potter and the death of his mentors and father figures. It even happened in Final Fantasy before 7. Galuf died in Final Fantasy V. What made the death of, and this is my last spoiler warning, what made the death of Eris special is not the fact that and how she died or was buried. The special thing is how the game handles what comes after, the experience of grief. Most popular franchises avoid this experience. They avoid the experience of grief. When James Bond's wife Tracy dies, we may in fact mourn her death privately because she was such an endearing character to watch, but we in fact do not watch Bond mourning. We are not grieving with him. We leave him in a state of denial before the actual experience of grief hits him. And then we meet him again 2 years later, taking revenge on Blofeld or pretending to ignore the Lazenby thing ever happened, since the pre-title sequence of Diamonds Forever was deliberately designed to match both perceptions. The actual experience of grief happened, if it happened at all, somewhere between both films, or both books. It is not part of reading or watching James Bond. Same case with Harry Potter. The death of his mentors have a big impact both on the main character and the reader. But again, since the deaths appear at the end of the respective book or film, the actual experience of grief happens in between two books and in between two movies. They are not part of reading or watching. We can mourn the death of two or more beloved characters, but we are grieving alone. We do not experience grief together with the characters we love. This is what makes Eris's death so special. When Galuf dies in Final Fantasy V, he's replaced by someone with exactly the same skill set. So the loss of Galuf never actually makes an actual difference for the playing experience. The loss of Eris is something that you feel. Whatever you have achieved with that character is just lost. Eris makes her absence felt. During the original game, she used to be a real chatterbox. When the characters have reached Icicle Inn, hardly anyone ever utters a word, even when there would be a lot to talk about. But they hardly ever do, because they are grieving. Let me read to you from a small fictional representation of the kind of grief which the characters experience, coming from my favorite childhood novel, Winnetou Part 3. Winnetou, dead. These two words are enough to describe the mood in which I found myself at that time. It was as if I couldn't part with his grave. I sat there in silence for the first few days and watched the hustle and bustle of the people working on the new settlement. I say I watched, but actually I didn't see anything. I heard their voices, and yet I heard nothing. I was absent-minded. My state of mind was like that of a man who has received a blow to the head and only half stunned hears everything as if from afar and sees everything as if through a frosted pane of glass. End of quote. The experience of being or feeling frosted, dull, iced, or frozen even is mirrored in the surroundings. The village of Icicle Inn is an outer representation of the grief which we are experiencing along with the main characters. Even the humorous little sideshow appearance of the Turk character Elena and one of her goons popping into the frame like Muppets is about grief. Elena mourns the death of her superior Tsang. The way she expresses her grief works almost as a parody of the feelings that we, the players, are experiencing along the main characters, which makes it both funny and sincere at the very same time. And this is one thing I actually do have an issue with in the remake. Aerith may be dead, or maybe not, but Tsang is very definitely not dead, which in my opinion weakens the meaning of death in the remake, perhaps even more so than the mere ambiguity of Aerith's ending. What makes the Icicle Inn chapter most haunting for me, however, has a lot to do with a simple piece of music that happens to be my personal favorite of Nobuo Uematsu's soundtrack, Buried in Snow. I have listened to each and every arrangement of it available at YouTube. I have yet to encounter one I do not love. Most of them are incredibly beautiful and bring me to tears in seconds, more so than the more popular Aerith's theme. But perhaps they work even better together. You know, Aerith's theme consists of an ascending 3-note motive going like this. Buried in Snow consists of a similarly ascending 3-note motive too. But it is not the same motive as Aerith's theme, just similar enough to let you subconscious experience the original theme's absence. And this is why it is repeated and repeated again and again, because the whole Icicle Inn chapter is about Aerith's absence. Even watching the videos of Professor Gust does not grant us the pleasure of seeing her again for the last time. She is absent there too, because her absence and the grief caused by it is what this chapter is about. Now, will the remake trilogy and the ambiguous ending of its second part spoil that? I do not know. I'm not able to call it yet. All I know is that my experience of grieving the original Aerith, which in my memory took me about 3 months, longer than the game took me to finish, and longer than grieving Winnetou took me, and let me tell you just that, coming from a German of my generation, that's some statement. All I do know is that the remake trilogy, altering, destroying, changing my personal experience of grieving Aerith, or Aerith, was inevitable. It could not possibly have been avoided. Why could it not have been avoided? Quite simple. Because the remake trilogy is a trilogy, and the second part had to end at the time of Aerith's death, even though I kept hoping to the last that it would end after Icicle Inn. But you all know by now that this did not happen. But let's just say all other wishes of the Final Fantasy purists and traditionalists would have been fulfilled, and the game would have ended with Aerith's death and burial, exactly as we remember it from the original game. What would happen then? Our period of grief would be right now. We would be mourning Aerith right now. It would happen between the games, but not in the game. We would not experience our grief together with our beloved characters as it should be. My 3 months of grief, which I already told you may be quite a long time for a character that is after all fictional, not real, is actually quite long. But they would be over by now already. And they would definitely be over another 2 years from now. By the time I would be able to play the third part of the remake, it would be Diamonds Are Forever all over again. It would be all about revenge, killing Blofeld or Sephiroth, with grieving Tracy or Aerith being an altogether dispensable afterthought. This is why, from an artist's perspective, keeping Aerith's death ambiguous did not only make sense, it is in fact necessary. Keeping Cloud and, in fact, us in a metaphorical state of denial is necessary. so that when the full force of grief will finally hit both Cloud and us, we will be able to experience it together. It may be in fact the only way to salvage this mutual experience of grief. Whether Square Enix will be able to pull it off remains to be seen 2 years from now. So long, I'm more than willing to give them the benefit of the doubt, as long as they don't ruin Buried in Snow and everything that it represents. Thanks for listening. No need for subscribing here. I only publish when I feel like it.